Welcome to the Pendulum Podcast. I am Zeb Boykin. I have with me Josh Vandernoord, Rodney Berry. My voice is a little off today, but we are going to be, conquering a little bit of the early onset South Carolina governor's race with Nancy Mace and maybe a couple others thrown in. We're going to be talking about term limits, maybe talking about kind of getting into address what happened last week. What happened. What did happen, Rodney? I don't know.
So much to uncover today. But first of all, it's Valentine's Day, so happy Valentine's, guys.
Thank you.
What'd you bring me?
I didn't. I spent all my money on my girlfriend. Sorry.
Okay.
So what does a young man do on Valentine's Day? You got big plans or?
A single young man? Nothing. I do this. I work.
How about you, Zip?
Woke up, gave the wife some flowers.
Oh, nice.
Went to the... I think it's called Pretty and Bliss with the baby yesterday. Got her a little bracelet. So he picked out one that was real colorful and he was happy with it. So she's happy with it. And how it works.
It does indeed.
Yeah. And then back to work. Here we are. But today we got a lot to talk about. Before we jump in, I got a new intro for y'all. Let Rodney jam out to this one.
Oh, man, I like that.
Not bad.
I like it a lot.
Pretty fun, huh?
You had two different generations, both having their head.
Jam out. It sounded good. I think it sounded good. I think it looked good. We got a lot to add to it, and that's a real quickie.
Hey, guys, can I bring up something before we get started? Because it's so fascinating. I mean, it plays right into your logo, the pendulum, as that it swings. And I really understood it after I left here last week. When I opened up, with my spiel last week, I even said, those that listened last week, I said, I saw y'all's face shift, and all of a sudden y'all looked at me, and it looked different. I had a buddy after watching it says, man, they broke the huddle on you, didn't they? And you did. All this time, I thought you guys were just going along with the Republican Party. And after the last segment, and when I went home and pondered on it, you guys have a real movement going on. And it's fascinating to me. And here's what I want to ask you before we get started. Y'all kind of convinced me that it's a movement, but I've never heard of it. All this time, I've never paid any attention. I didn't really know there was a movement, a younger generation movement. Again, I thought you guys were just tagging along. So convince me, is there a movement? And what specifically is the movement? I'm so fascinated by it. And I think everyone my age and a little bit younger will be fascinated by it too.
We're
coming in. Don't go out the door.
Wrong button. Apologies. But before Josh jumps in, which I do want him to take this over. Me and Josh aren't really, you call it a movement. I don't think we're in the same sphere necessarily. I think we came from this from two different angles. We just end up at the same place. I mean, me and Josh have how old are you, Josh?
I'm 27.
27. So, I mean, there's about 6 years between us. And I would say we are part of different generations. Like, there's a lot that goes on. I mean, a generation we kind of talked about this yesterday, is what is a boomer? And a boomer isn't defined by birthday. A boomer is defined by the mindset. Mm-hmm. And it's kind of what we talked about a little bit the other day, is kind of the separation in the Republican Party. I don't know if this is a collective movement, but I would say that it is a movement that is being formed. It's not new necessarily. I mean, you have people like Patrick Buchanan that kind of pioneered this. He was just a couple generations removed from his time. I mean, if he was alive today, he would be leading this movement. I mean, he is the Trump of his time, you could argue, or even the J.D. Vance, but we'll see that here in the next 4 years. If you want to kind of address, is this a movement, Josh?
I think it is.
And what is this?
This, I mean, it falls under the purview of many categories, and so I would define it very broadly, because of course with all political parties, with all political ideas, there's going to be varying opinions. There's going to be a difference of ideology and whatnot. I would say some of the broader things that Zeb and I the categories we would fall into would be more of a focus on traditionalism. So, you've heard conservative, liberal, and we have preconceptions about what those two things mean. But what we should ask ourselves is when we say conservatives, the three of us are conservative, but what do we want to conserve? That's what's different. So a lot of we've been talking about the boomer generation a lot lately, and a lot of the goals that the boomers aspire to would be like having a prosperous economy, having a high GDP, which those aren't bad things. And that's not to say that Zeb and I don't want those things too, but we basically have evaluated what are we losing for the sake of those things. And I think Zeb and I, we have a very traditional view of the nation. What is the United States of America? Is it simply
and how
lines on a map?
ironic that is that the younger generation has that. I tout that you have that traditionalism, but isn't it ironic that it's the young generation that's really embracing and adopting that?
Yeah, me and Josh we touched on this yesterday. Is this idea of we kind of want to go back to tradition, and what is tradition? And I think we kind of disagree on what that tradition is, where the founders' fathers were when they created the Constitution. A lot of the older generation want to kind of go back to the 70s, 80s, even the 90s of this idea of liberalism, because they perceived that's where the founding fathers wanted us to be. But me and Josh and people like us, we want to look at the founding fathers as more traditional, where they wanted specifically a nation and drive something that is conservative and not necessarily liberal in nature. Because if we go back to a liberal or even a libertarian, the classical liberal, call it what you will, ideology that is not, let's say, pre-20th century, then we're just going to end up exactly where we are today in 5 years' time.
But I saw some other characteristics last month, which, again, I told you I thought a lot about this because it just fascinated me so much. But there's some uniqueness in you guys that I heard last week. For instance, I was always raised on compromise. Not compromising can be a very positive thing, but I clearly felt like I heard both of you say, we're not willing to compromise anymore on certain subject matters. Just expound on that just a little bit. I mean, am I accurate in saying that? Y'all have kind of drawn lines and saying enough is enough?
Yeah, and if I could say quickly, I think what we mean by that is basically it's not what we are willing to compromise on. It's what everyone has been willing to compromise on. For example, I brought this up on my other job the other week, is people have a real hunger for Donald Trump before he even showed up. Because when he showed up on the scene, he was saying the things that everyone was thinking, but none of the politicians were saying, and everyone loved it. So my point, the point Zeb and I are kind of getting at, is what we've seen in politics is you can't vote. I mean, you can write in whoever you want, but realistically, it's a two-party system. You're only getting two choices. But the choices that the Conservative Party has been giving everyone, even before we were born, for the longest time, aren't really America first. And they've been trending further and further away from that. And the compromise is being made on the part of the America firsters. They're going to say, well, we don't want rampant homosexuality. We don't want, what am I thinking of? Kamala Harris was going to say a capital gains tax. Well, we don't want that. So we'll vote for the next best thing, which is just some diet conservative like John McCain or Mitt Romney. And people were willing to take that because it wasn't as bad as the alternative. What Zeb and I are hoping for is creating a movement, create this consciousness, regardless of the two of us. It didn't start with us. It's been around for a while, and it's starting to gain some traction, which is the typical focus on the economy and less so on the native born Americans, the actual heart and soul of the nation. We're not going to accept that anymore. We want a higher standard. We want to hold our politicians to a higher standard. We want our goals to be met. The concessions have been made on our part for so long. It's about time the donors, the politicians, they need to start conceding to us.
Oh, I love that. Not business as usual. That is what I'm hearing. So let me ask you this. Are you a voting block yet? Is there enough? I'm encouraged, and although I don't align 100% with you guys, we've talked enough that I align a good bit, and I'm very encouraged and optimistic that this kind of movement is taking place.
I'll tell you.
But is it big enough? And somebody needs to name this movement, because how do you know what to get behind if you don't?
It's coming. The voting block is coming. I don't have the chart right now, but I know Ken talked about the chart on the other day on their podcast. It was showing, the different age groups as they go up, and all of the younger age groups were trending conservative significantly. And that conservative trend is going to have to be broken down into the split that we're talking about. And then as it gets older and you get up on, I think it was 45 and older, it was an even split between liberal and conservative. And so as these older groups get older and start dying off, because that's simply what's going to happen, this conservatism is going to take over. And at that point, again, we're going to have to figure out where this split is in the Conservative Party. And that's essentially what we're kind of debating right now, is where is that split? And I want to kind of get into, before the show, we were talking about what is the Longhouse, and I kind of want to talk about what is the Longhouse, but this kind of leads us, or this will lead us into it. We can go ahead and jump into the Nancy Mace situation, because I know somebody's asking about it in the comments. Ronnie, you spent some time up in D.C. How does someone go on the House floor and accuse people, whoever it is, there's a lot of names that were thrown out for essentially an hour. You have to sit there and listen to this. Yet no charges were pressed. Nothing's been brought up. What is it? Simply theater? Is it simply her running for governorship in D.C.? What is something like that where you just have to sit there and just take it?
Yeah. So, I say this very respectfully. She's a sitting congresswoman, and there's due respect to that, like there would be for a Democrat as well. However, how can you not think it's not theater? And I go back to think, and again, I want to be careful with this, because the mission's correct, in my opinion. Everybody deserves to be treated the way they should be treated. But I think about things like this. If that was her fiance, it was a little lack of judge of character to begin with.
I mean, I would say so.
That's the quick rebuttal, the natural rebuttal from anyone. But as I've watched her, and I follow her on social media, and I sent you guys a tweet. It says, "Real men like Donald Trump would protect women." Great. We're talking about you. Yeah, we're talking about you, not don't hide behind the most powerful men in the world. We're talking about you. And I think certainly, she is gearing up for the governor's run. She's made an announcement, really. But I do fear things like that, because where does this end? Everybody's getting outrageous with their comments to the media, and they're doing unusual things. And to me, again, y'all, I sign my emails. We is greater than me. That's what I subscribe to. And I think she's another one right now, respectfully, that's more me is greater than we.
She's got the ambition. She has the ambition.
And I admire ambition, but it just doesn't look real genuine to me.
Now, before I start getting into, because I'll blast Nancy Mace all day long. I know you're a little bit more respectful on that end than I am, but the AG called into y'all show the other day, and he was kind of talking about how Nancy Mace was accusing him of not doing his job properly.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So she's taking shots at the current AG, Alan Wilson. And the question is, why would that be? Does she expect Alan Wilson to run for governor against her? He hasn't announced yet. He basically said he's not going to announce until he announces, if he's going to announce. I know it was a mouthful right there, but what did he say on the show when he called in? Basically, essentially the day after, almost hours after she had her little spiel on the House floor.
Yeah, so Kennard of Wake Up Carolina, he basically said the position of AG in South Carolina means aspiring governor. Mm-hmm. So I think it's fair to say that Alan Wilson's going to run. He's going to run for governor. And what happened was, so for a little bit of context, like you were saying, she implied that he did not do his job in prosecuting a person that raped her. And what she cited was an instance where she had sent him evidence, and he said, this is not the proper this is not the proper track, like our chain of command, so to speak. I'm the prosecutor. This needs to go to the police first, and then they bring it to me. If you send it to me, it's going to make it look fishy. It's going to make it look kind of like an inside type thing, because we're both politicians. So go through the proper, chain of command, go through the proper tracks, and, we'll do our best to help you out. And she took advantage of that to make it seem as if Alan Wilson was protecting the rapist at her expense.
I've also saw quotes where she's praised him. And, I think he's too savvy for that. There's no question in my mind he's going to run. I think he's wanted to run for the past several times, and situations didn't align for him. But I think he's been waiting on this. And I got to tell you, I like the guy. I like his military experience. He's savvy. I don't think he'll be drawn into those nasty fights, which will be her forte. I mean, she's pretty social media savvy as much as anybody, so she knows how to do that. But I think he's way too smart for that. And I could easily align with him. What's interesting to me, his daddy's the Congressman Joe Wilson, who certainly has a great relations with Trump and the governor as well. What's going to be interesting when you get the other players come in, like Pamela Evitt as lieutenant governor. There's no doubt in my mind she has aspirations. And, that's the perfect job to run for governor, because honestly, your work, you're being political the whole time. And then I've heard Ralph Norman as well. So who knows who will unfold in this race? But I'd have to say Alan Wilson's the favorite. But
she's also been taking shots at Pamela Evitt, who's the current lieutenant governor.
That's right.
She's taking shots at all the competition, most likely.
Yeah, I mean, I have my own quarrels. I let Mr. Jones finish out his comment here, but before we respond, I have my own quarrels with Nancy Mace. She likes to run it on Twitter, kind of bashing the trans movement, which I'm all for, absolutely all for. Mm-hmm. But the problem is she pioneered this. She was the woman that pioneered the graduation of women in Citadel. Her father assisted her in that situation. So there's a little bit of a conflict of interest there. Where
he was the commandant.
He was the commandant when she graduated. Yes, and so that's a husband or her father. So there's a little bit of a conflict there. I mean, if you want to tout this accomplishment of graduating from the Citadel, where you invaded men's spaces, yet now you want to save women's spaces from men, it's like there's a double standard there. So but she won't address it. Any comment, mate? I think we're live.
Are we?
Oh, yeah.
Okay, yeah.
Sorry about that.
Turbo Jones.
Oh, boy.
Come back, Turbo Jones.
A little technical difficulty. I didn't know that was a hotkey. We do now. We won't do that again. I'll see if I can get old Turbo Jones back in here. He had a rebuttal comment. He's probably like, "Oh, they ended the stream because I pushed them." We were talking about. Sorry about it.
Sorry, Turbo Jones.
a hotkey to end broadcast. I didn't know that was a hotkey. We learned now. But I guess I was talking about Nancy Mace and her addressing the transition, the trans movement and women's sports and bathrooms and everything else. Yet she pioneered a lot of this, and she kind of touts that as her main accomplishment moving forward. She is running for governor. She's doing it in a way that maybe I don't think she should. Let me find his comment.
She's doing the whole like MAGA mom thing, kind of like what's her name?
What a great point.
Marjorie Taylor Greene, where they are bandwagoning on Trump's energy, and they're doing the like I'm a sassy, take no nonsense girl, and doing all this kind of bombastic Trump stuff. Nancy Mace a couple weeks ago, she got into an argument. I forget who it was. I think Corey something, but there was a black Senate or Congress person that they got into a shouting match. This was a few weeks ago, and that's just like, that's what she was going for. This was not like a genuine thing. As you've probably heard the expression AstroTurf before. It's a totally like formulated thing.
Yeah, I think so many aspiring politicians today try to take on Trump's actual personality, and that's a mistake. You can go along. Because Mace has a lot of good things to tout. She really does. But, all that yelling and taking on someone's personality, that's not original to me. That's not genuine. I think she can maneuver behind her own accomplishments, without yelling. So I frown upon that. Be yourself in politics.
Yeah, 100%.
What was the comment he left, if you want to kind of paraphrase it?
From what I remember, he said, if you want to type it again, Turbo Jones, we welcome it. But basically, it was along the lines of, he's typing more comments now, but it was something along the lines of, they had direct contact with each other, and it was a rebuttal to whatever I was saying. So I can't quite remember the point, but he was basically getting at to where, because they were talking to each other, it was like more above board, I guess. I'm not quite sure what his point was. Yeah, you know, I didn't get to see the second comment before the video got taken down.
I'm just stunned that this AG thinks he avoided receiving this evidence. I mean, as we sit here, he's simply not curious about this huge allegation. Well, Trump comments on the case saying, seems like a normal AG would want to know what's going on here. I mean, yeah, absolutely. I mean, there's so much wrong here. I mean, he did claim it's a lot of theater, and it probably is. I do think SA cases should be taken seriously. And there are avenues to be taken. I don't think it should be taken directly to the AG, though, just simply based on how things operate. But I mean,
yeah,
he can't simply just field cases like this. I mean, from everybody, you know what I mean?
And SA cases they're touchy on both ends. You know, it's even nowadays, the sort of like Me Too, believe all women thing is kind of going by the wayside too, where now you're hearing all these stories coming up of young men or even just men being accused of things from decades ago, and then, you know, their lives are thrown in the toilet, and then a few years later it comes out, oh, I lied. But by then everything's been completely uprooted.
Ruined.
So for her to, I kind of get his explanation, which was, we're friends, but this is not the proper chain of command. And because this is, you're a high profile person, I'm a high profile person, us talking directly about it and you submitting evidence directly to me, that is going to come out and it isn't going to look good. Go through the proper channels. That's what Alan Wilson said to us.
Yeah, and that's maturity in my stance. That's a lot of maturity and foresight, and that probably tells you right there that all along he was thinking about running for governor, because there's certain situations you're not going to get in. Politics just kind of dictates that, but I think that showed a lot of maturity.
Yeah, he definitely gave a political answer, if anything. But no, I mean, I fully expect him to run for governor. I fully expect, you know, Mace to be there, and I fully expect for Pamela Evett to be there. I think there was another one Kim mentioned, Thomas.
So no,
no, he won't be there. But you know,
there's a Warren. What he ran a couple of years ago, had a real good race up in the upstate. The Warren, I can't remember his first name, but he's a businessman. He ran a very close race.
I mean, I wouldn't
know who you're talking about. Oh, I can't remember.
Last name's Warren. I just can't remember.
Yeah.
I mean, and again, I've heard Ralph Norman too. Now he's kind of a force to himself. He'll act. I mean,
this is going to be a big race. I mean, this is a big race moving forward. I mean,
sure will.
South Carolina is a red state, and it will remain red for the coming future. But this governor race is going to carry a lot of weight moving forward.
Well, there's a lot. It's going to make a lot of people uncomfortable because you got so many likable and well-known characters that you know, people's going to start choosing lines, and that gets awful hairy when you do that. But
yeah,
who would the new breeds fall behind? Is it too early to say?
I mean, it wouldn't be Nancy Mace, and we can make that case here. I think women in politics are. I think they've run their course. I don't see many women getting elected here pretty soon.
That's the type of thing that makes me uncomfortable. And I like it. Look, he's bold and stand. I get it. I respect that stance. It still makes me uncomfortable. I can't say, again, I so much admire this movement and look forward to learning more through these podcasts. And I see where I align in so many ways. But there's little things that I can.
Well, it's not a matter of law necessarily that's going to happen. I mean, it's simply a matter of who's going to be elected. I think people, the entire idea is that people are just tired of what has been happening, and we want change.
Yeah.
And so that tiresome has built up to the point where we just want something. We want somebody that's strong, willing to stand up for what they believe and actually push through without running SA cases to the House in DC. Like take care of it, yes, but don't theater for it for pity votes. If that's,
I hear you.
arguably, if that's what she's doing.
She doesn't even do Trump well. Trump will like make these sort of like drive-by comments as if to like they're not even a part of his point. You know, it's like, oh, you know, little Marco's having trouble with his credit cards. That's not like the point of what he's saying. Nancy Mace drums up drama and hones in on it. Like that is what she has been that's what she's known for now. You know, she's basically an attention seeker, and it's not genuine, and it's not. So I personally, I'm not.
Well, let me play this little clip that Rodney had for us today. I don't know if exactly it was supposed to be used in this vein, but I want to use it in this vein. Is Maxine Waters talking to the security guard that doesn't want to let him inside the building, rightly so. But again, we talk about women in politics, Maxine Waters being one of them. We're just tired of listening to it. And I don't know if I clipped the face that he makes where he's just, kind of uninterested face.
I don't know if I clipped it, excited.
But let's watch it real quick.
We're coming in. Don't lock the door. We're coming in. Who are you?
You're not coming in.
Who are you?
Who under whose
Who are
orders?
you? Who are you?
Who are you, sir?
Do you have business here?
I have sent the secretary. I have sent the assistant secretary a letter alerting her that we would be here today.
Yeah, so I mean that's basically the clip. I didn't get his face, but
what was the context?
The context was they were doing an audit on the inside of the building for USAID, and the Congress was trying to get in there because they were scared of being exposed, I guess, is what they were scared of. And I got two charts that we can look at here in a second, too, about that. But, Maxine Waters wanted to get into the building, lecturing the guy. He's just doing his job. And that's where we're at. Whether it's RFK in a hearing being lectured at by Elizabeth Warren or Pete Hegseth in the hearing being lectured by whoever else. And it's just, it's all this emotionless face. I'm just tired. Just let me do my job. Let me fix this country. Get out of the way. That's where we're at, Rodney. That's where we're at.
And she was carrying on like a mad woman, looking privileged. But when I saw this clip, and this guy got stardom on social media for his stance, but I thought about you two guys. After my eye-opening experience in the last week, I said, look, he's taking on the position that my buddies in the podcast take on. He was stoic. And she was all in his face. And if you watch that, he'll says, no. I keep using non-apologetic, strong, strength. We've had enough. We're going forward. You're not getting in here. And he told that to a handful of congressmen. That took a lot of strength. But I saw you guys' movement there. Enough is enough.
Yeah, and that guy, he was just a security guard, right?
Just a security guard.
Yeah,
he wasn't like standing guard. Yeah, I feel like... That face though, I did get kind of like a side profile for a second. The whole like he sees these people coming and he's like, oh my God. Like
but most would have folded. So many would have folded. Even that you had orders, so many would have folded in that situation.
I don't think so, not anymore. I think he's an example of what is happening right now.
Yeah.
And I made the comment a second ago of RFK in the hearing, Pete Hegseth in the hearing, Kash Patel in the hearing. There's pictures of all these guys coming out, and and Tom Homan, they're just accepting the criticism, saying, finish with your theatrics and just let me do my job. That's all they want to do. Just let me do my job. Give me my job and let me do it. Get out of the way. These women in politics have no power. They just want to preach.
Well, not just, I hear about not just women, but there was a host of
effeminate men. The effeminacy up and down, all of it.
Okay.
The estrogen is overflowing. We need testosterone.
And maybe we'll get into that. But here's why I'm encouraged, because, it's just in the air. It's a different day. Trump is unleashed. And people finally know that there's power behind it, and they're unapologetic. But the leashes have come off, and people say, "No, this is our stance." The majority of people said this is our stance, and we're going to run with it this time. I love the Bushes. A lot of people didn't, but I liked them. But can you imagine any of those? It took Trump to unleash all this. And the pace we're going is quite amazing. I can't wait. I mean, something's going to happen by the time we get out of here. But I love that people's embracing it, and all these hearings where you hear all this bickering, the Republicans are now saying, no, we're moving forward. Enough is enough. A new day.
It's definitely encouraging because I think to kind of piggyback off your point, what you've seen is like when you see Barack Obama in the office, in the Oval Office, and all of a sudden, like this, it's like it's all white people's fault type rhetoric is constantly, going around. And then you see black politicians walk up to you and like start demanding things of you. How's it going to look for you to like refuse them, even though you're supposed to, on like as per your job description? Mm-hmm. But like you said, now that there's a new dog in town, those days are over.
No, and that has always been the biggest factor. If I'm to be clear, is race has been such a big factor. And to even include that in saying, no, this is our agenda. It's not white or black. This is the agenda. If you get in the way, whether you're white, black, what have you, we're still moving forward because we're spoken. And it's time to make these appropriate changes.
Yeah. We just talked about the security guard clip, and they were trying to get into the building because Doge was basically auditing the entirety of the USAID, and they've kind of moved on to FEMA. We'll see what that takes care of. But in D.C., right after this happened, there was a massive spike in what were they searching? I got my
criminal defense.
It was criminal defense lawyer.
This.
This is a chart for I think that's what it was. Yeah, it was the most Googled. They're Googling it like 4 times.
That's great.
5 times chart. More than anyone else in the entire country.
That's crazy.
This is DC running scared. And I'm going to run this other chart by you. This is the election. This is DC up 86 points basically. So this is the demographics of DC voting for Kamala Harris at nearly 93%. And then we run, Doge comes into town, and then you see this chart of an increase of district defense attorneys that they're looking for in DC. So, Ronnie, you've been up there. You call them no door knobbers, but is it really that bad up there? Is 94% of them corrupt?
Gosh, it's tough to say. Let me throw a percentage of 75, but I'd say that 25 is in their first few terms. If we want to talk about term limits, which I think breeds all those bad habits, I think that's the culprit of it. But I do think it's bad. That last graph that you showed, that's pretty amazing. I'd heard that through the week that was the most Googled. It was quite different to see the graph for myself.
I think that's the right graph. It might be, but the point stands. It was a significantly more Googled defense attorney in DC area than anywhere else. I mean, the spike was crazy. Yeah. Hopefully they'll have to use them. Hopefully they'll get to spend some money. I think I saw another chart that showed shell corporations or shell banking accounts or offshore banking accounts, and that was all like a significant rise too. So hopefully we get to the money before it gets gone.
Ideally, we would.
You can't hide anything these days. Those days are over. Everything's for public consumption.
Yeah.
People's going to find it.
Do you think we're going to actually see any like real consequential figures put in jail?
Okay, so history would say no, because those folks never get prosecuted. But it's a new day, so I hope so. I never wish any harm on anyone, but if you're doing things wrong, then that's the consequences. I hope so. I do hope we make a statement on some folks. Well, on anybody that's participating in that kind of activity.
Yeah, I got another. We can jump to another video real quick, just for.
Man, you've been busy with the video.
Giggles.
I know, man.
Mr. President, you won the White House in part because of high inflation. If your tariffs make prices go up...
Excuse me, we haven't asked you to speak yet, please. Right?
Again, this is a rejection of well, I guess a female reporter. A lot of them are. It wasn't her turn to speak, and they just like to talk. I know the females are going to take this the wrong way, but at a certain point, you have to understand that they're tired. Just let me do my job. Trump just wants to do his job. Let me sign the EO and get out of the way without too much being talked to about it. And this is the case. Same thing with the security guard. What this split, and I guess we can address Turbo Jones here. His comment, he said by saying Mace saying, "I'll burn this whole thing down. I'm pretty concerned." She's talking about splitting Trump women from men on the House floor. Mace was backed by 2 rising female U.S. reps. Yes, I agree. I think the split is happening regardless of what Nancy Mace wants to do. I think the system needs to be burned down, but the problem is Nancy Mace wants to burn the system down in a different way than we want to burn the system down. We want to restart. She wants to just go back to prior to, 2010, let's say. We want to go all the way back to 1950, if not 1850. That's the split that's going to happen. And it is largely men and women, but it could be classified more as effeminate and testosterone-driven men.
Yeah, we were talking yesterday about gatekeeping and how the boomers have gate-kept politics. Well, now, I mean, there's more than just one category. Now it's also the women. And by women, we also mean femmy men that basically to get a job. You remember not long after Biden got in, there was this controversy about, what was it, some gay dude having sex in like the Capitol building?
Oh yeah, he filmed it. They filmed it on the house on the second floor. You remember this?
I don't.
Yep.
Yeah, they were essentially shooting a porno on the second floor of the house and posted it. But there was no repercussions from it.
And these are the kind of people, and they hire each
other.
These
are the people that run in the country right now.
Mm-hmm.
That's what we're trying to get through. This is what we're tired of.
The passion is unreal by you guys. And I told you, I was excited all week because I came in here just dumbfounded, not realizing you guys really had an agenda and it was this strong. But it's fascinating to me. I mean, you guys I see strength all over it. I'm really encouraged. I can't align with everything, but I'm really encouraged at the things you're saying.
Well, I guess to get back to the original question that you asked us on, is this a movement? I think it is a movement, but not as a collective yet. And I mean, I got a few books over there from Christian nationalism to Age of Entitlement, the Unprotected Class, that would all essentially you could file under this movement, whatever it is, and the movement is essentially to revert back to where our fathers were, and we say the founding fathers. And again, I can reference, the 19th Amendment was in the original Constitution for a reason. This is what the founding fathers wanted to push. They wanted to push for white posterity, and this is exactly the reason I think that they wanted it, was because they knew it was going to end up like this. So as soon as the 19th Amendment has to be reversed eventually, or everything comes crashing down, which is the case that Turbo Jones is making, whether he wants to make that case or not. Yeah. It's this idea that the people that built the country no longer maintain the country. And the people that are maintaining the country didn't build it because they can't build it. And so if they can't build it, they can't maintain it. And because they can't maintain it, everything comes crumbling down. And they've been running this for, 50 years or so now.
How mature is it for your generation to revert back to that and see that when my generation really has it? Do you think J.D. Vance is the leader of this thought?
I think he's.
This is probably where the two of us split.
This is where we split heavily. And I do have a counter to your techie argument. J.D. Vance tweeted out the other day something to the effect of addressing the AI issues with small businesses, but what really stuck out to me was he separated populists from techies. And when I say techies, I mean Silicon Valley. And it really stuck out to me that he considered the populists as in opposition to the techies. And so typically when somebody considers something a populist position, they usually take that position. That's their default position. And I think that moving forward, he is not necessarily pro-techie. He's not a part of this Silicon Valley movement moving forward. What you were going to say?
About JD Vance, I know what you're referring to. I guess I would just say, because Zeb and I, we disagree on JD Vance because like I'm a ideal, like we're both Christian nationalists, but I'm basically of the mind that JD Vance is also a little bit fake. He's a little bit astroturfed, and again, like when in a different way than Nancy Mace. Nancy Mace is basically doing this all herself. She has characterized herself as like a Trump-esque politician. JD Vance has strange connections to people like Peter Thiel, who are in tech. You know, he's the founder of Palantir, which is a CIA contract. And again, there's no direct evidence of foul play. It's just like suspicious connections that I don't particularly like. And the fact that JD Vance was against all the stuff we are in favor of in 2008. Now, I understand that people can have a come to Jesus moment. I understand that people can change their minds. But the fact that I believe there is a factor we all must consider, which is he's the vice president in the United States, and he wanted to be the vice president of the United States. And I think he's willing to say what people want to hear, just as all politicians are, to get what he wants. And you've seen, you know, since he was elected and a little bit before, him redirecting the conversation a little bit away from it at times, and then sometimes, like now, a little bit back. So I'm unsure, but also unconvinced.
But to counter Josh's argument a little bit, again, this is where we kind of disagree. What he's arguing now is not a typical politician stance. What he's his speeches are saying, and I'll play one here in a second, is not a traditional position. It's not a safe position. What he's arguing is our position, the moving forward. So you could say, in a way, because he holds the position that he holds, he is the leader of this movement. But there's no formality here. But here's JD Vance talking to the EU. We'll just give it a listen. I think it's about 2.5 minutes.
I believe there is nothing more urgent than mass migration. Today, almost 1 in 5 people living in this country moved here from abroad. That is, of course, an all-time high. It's a similar number, by the way, in the United States, also an all-time high. The number of immigrants who entered the EU from non-EU countries doubled between 2021 and 2022 alone, and of course, it's gotten much higher since. And we know the situation, it didn't materialize in a vacuum. It's the result of a series of conscious decisions made by politicians all over the continent and others across the world over the span of a decade. We saw the horrors wrought by these decisions yesterday in this very city. And of course, I can't bring it up again without thinking about the terrible victims who had a beautiful winter day in Munich ruined. Our thoughts and prayers are with them and will remain with them. But why did this happen in the first place? It's a terrible story, but it's one we've heard way too many times in Europe and unfortunately too many times in the United States as well. An asylum seeker, often a young man in his mid-20s, already known to police, rams a car into a crowd and shatters a community. How many times must we suffer these appalling setbacks before we change course and take our shared civilization in a new direction? No voter on this continent went to the ballot box to open the floodgates to millions of unvetted immigrants.
And that was to the entire EU. I'll let you maybe to respond to what you thought about that. But that's to the most powerful government officials in the world, essentially.
Well, no, I heard language that I'm hearing from you guys, not to simplify it too much, that, it's a new day. The voter box said we're moving forward. I sound like a broken record, but that's what I'm hearing him say. That's why what I'm hearing you guys say. And last week, I mean, you guys really made me dig a little deep at where I stand. And I told Josh before the show that how pompous of me, baby boomer, thinking you guys were just tagging along. I mean, I came in here blind as a bat. And,
I thought you did well considering, this is the position that we stand up on.
I was like, let's ease off a little bit,
Hey, you boys broke the huddle on me.
But yeah, he's arguing for, not against illegal immigration, but immigration in general. He's making the case that these countries aren't going to be known for what they are. I mean, the English that occupy England are essentially going to be a minority pretty soon. He said, they're doubling year over year. I mean, you can only take that for so long before the country is no longer noticeable. I mean, at what point is England not England, but has now become Africa? Yeah, just due to immigration.
I'm a little surprised at your takeaway because I didn't get that from the video at all, and maybe I missed something. But I'll harken back to what we were talking about last week. We, the three of us were kind of debating immigration, and you said it was actually like a point of slight contention between us where you said there's a place for immigrants in this country, and Zeb and myself were kind of pushing back on that, saying maybe there was a time for that, but it's no longer necessary. And ultimately, I think we need to get the founding stock of the nation, having babies, and kind of that needs to be the ethnic group that is, and the people that are filling this nation up, that are running this nation. And so with that in mind, I didn't take that away from JD's comments at all. I mean, I feel like he was directly referencing the attack in Munich where a guy drove a truck through a crowd of people. And he mentioned it was a refugee, someone who had refugee status, a Muslim.
Asylum seeker, yeah.
But there was nothing in there that indicated, because you and I are against, we talked about the H-1B visas.
Well, he prefaced it with immigration in general. 1 in 5 people that have immigrated or that are in the EU, and he said similar numbers in the U.S., were not born there. I mean, 1 in 5 is 20%. That's an insane statistic to me. And then he caveated that with it's essentially doubling year over year. And so to me, that is him arguing against immigration in general because it's displacing the people that were born there, the founding stock or the natives of that country.
I understand that, but I think you're making a leap to that last point. Yes. And
I
I'll
would
tell
say
you why.
I'm not, because of his past tweets that I don't have on hand right now.
Came to court
if you want to take a second
to court without his evidence.
But this is what I'll say. For example, we're against including productive immigrants, immigrants that don't break the law. We have to understand he's talking to the EU. He's talking to people in Europe. That guy may have been, like, if it were the exact same situation in the United States, he might be considered an illegal. They have different laws. They have different, regulations over there. But by our standards, by the way we think of it, he would probably be an illegal. The whole refugee status thing. He came over there not because he has a job in IT lined up, but because he's fleeing he's fleeing a bad country. He's fleeing to find a better life in Europe. And when he talks about immigration, again, to my point, which is I think J.D. Vance, he's not stupid. He knows what he's doing. And I think he's trying to corral people in both parties. And I think by being somewhat vague, I don't believe that it's necessarily I'm like hiding my true power level type thing. I think he's towing the line so no one can kind of catch him in a contradiction. You know what I mean?
Yeah. I think what we need to do, Rodney, is you can be an audience on a J.D. Vance debate stream. and I've said this before, not too long ago. I wasn't on the JD Vance train, and as long as he continues on this path that he's on, I think we're golden. I think Josh will come around eventually. Josh, how long would it take for JD Vance to continue this for you? To make that jump.
It's actions, not time. If he came out and said, I want everyone to convert to Christianity at the point of a sword, I'd be like, okay, maybe Peter Thiel isn't holding the strings after all.
Well, he did.
He's not going to say that.
He did combat against the Pope's statement the other day that said the U.S. wanting to put a border and stop illegal immigration and coal immigration. He did kind of say, I can't remember exactly what he said, but he shot back at the Pope the other day, and he is a Catholic. I'm not, but
being a little nitpicky here.
Go ahead.
But if anything, I'm not a Catholic either, but he supposedly is. For him to disagree with their Pope, who is quite literally they believe he's the voice of God, doesn't that show that he's a little disingenuous? That he doesn't have true faith in the Pope? The Pope?
Maybe he's pulling a little Martin Luther over here, and he's gonna be a Protestant.
Well, so
maybe
you guys,
maybe that's what it takes. A little opposition to the Pope personally before one realizes that he's infallible or he's not infallible.
So you guys' stance is that no immigration at all. That's
our stance will essentially boil down to at an absolute maximum net moratorium on immigration, meaning the amount of people that leave the country is allowed to come in the country, whether that's 1 or 100,000.
Okay.
And then inevitably, there has to be a understanding that there has to be a common culture across the nation. And whatever form that takes to achieve, whether that's to lock down the borders for 100 years or to actually remove people that are uncultured or unassimilated to the American nation, uncultured in however you want to interpret that. I mean, for us to maintain America as a nation, there has to be extreme moves soon, or we lose everything.
I think
does that make sense?
And I think it's taking place, but I do think there's a place for immigration. I just, too soon, too quick, too much, I fear will cripple us. I guess a good litmus test with all the releasings in the federal government. I'm behind it, and in principle, I believe in it. But we're going to see live if it cripples our nation by having those less government workers. I don't think we will. I think there was a lot of waste, but we'll see in real time how bad, if at all, it cripples us.
Yeah, and I think not to totally reiterate our points from last week, but I think our view on immigration is what a nation is deeper than just your voting party and what you believe. It's a people, it's a place, it's a religion, it's an ethnicity, it's many, many things. And the more we import people from other countries, whether they're low skilled strawberry pickers or high skilled IT workers and people working on AI, if you import more of them than the founding stock of the nation and they're outbreeding us, eventually they will replace us and it will be a different nation. Even if it has the same name and the same laws, it will be different. So what Zeb and I are proposing, we're not against like immigration for all time, forever. Well, and I'm even in favor of letting in high skilled like specialists in, but
like a prime
surgeon.
Like a prime example would be we would accept immigration from South Africa right now of the Boer. They need to be essentially saved from a genocide that's happening over there. And so we would accept them. They are a Western people. They wouldn't need to assimilate because they already have our culture. Me and Josh, I think we agree that assimilation isn't really real. It doesn't really happen in the way that people want it to. And so,
and even look at it's harder for people that are different to assimilate. Perfect example is Italians. Italians immigrated here en masse in like the what was it, like the 20s, 30s? Yeah. And to this day, you still get a lot of like noticeable differences in culture. And these are people that have en masse, like we would consider, we would consider them Americans, we would consider them white people, but it's still noticeably different. For people that are vastly different, that are a totally different skin color, that their culture is almost nothing like ours, what they do is they isolate themselves and preserve their culture within our borders. And you don't see any assimilation whatsoever.
That's a great point, and it's also a very true point.
I like to pull up the map of New York City, and it shows the demographic breakdown by demographics as an overview of New York City, and it's very parsed out. These people not only do they not immigrate, but they intentionally group themselves together. And it's noticeable all over the country.
I went so many people visit Christmas, and I went not Christmas before. And you're right, you can plot down, and if you were just transported in, you would think you were outside of the United States.
Yeah, I mean that's what me and Josh want to do. We want to drive across the country, be able to stop at different places and say, "Oh, this is familiar. This is my home. This is my country." But when you do that now, there's a little bit of difference. I'll drive through Pennsylvania. It's rural and it's nice. And I feel at home just as much as I do in South Carolina. Yet when I drive through Boston and New York and these places that are Philadelphia that are just simply different, it's simply not America because of demographics. And the culture is entirely different.
And I'll give you, I just want to say a quick example is I grew up in Charlotte, North Carolina. Very diverse city, has been for many, many years. I grew up in a very diverse church. The church we went to, it's not like a different sect or anything, but the church itself was founded by a Chinese guy. There was a lot of Chinese people, a lot of Indian people, very few white people, and we were one of those people. I had friends that were Chinese, I had friends that were Indian, Hispanic in the church. Not a problem at all. No hate towards anyone. But a few years ago, we went to visit extended family in Louisville, Kentucky, and I'd never been before. And just being in that city, it was a weird feeling. It was like the people, of course I'd seen white people before, but they like looked different, and it felt like home almost. I felt like more comfortable, and it was something I hadn't felt to that extent before because it was not what I was used to, and it was like. Dang, I was like looking as like, can I move here or something? This just feels right. You know what I mean? And we want to be able to give that to our children.
Yeah. So great points. Someone that don't allow you to explain your position in totality, I'd say get a strong backbone, because you could easily be called elitist.
Yeah, well, people
they dig a little deeper.
No, I mean they'll completely throw the term out of Nazi to us, or white supremacist, and I mean you could call us white nationalists. I think it's a redundant term. I think nationalist is simply tied to ethnicity inevitably, because you have to share a common heritage with a people before a nation to exist. If you don't, it's simply a country with borders. And that's kind of the argument that we're making is we're Christian nationalists in the term of a shared heritage. So somewhere like Zambia is a Christian nationalist nation, but it's not a white nationalist nation. It's a black nationalist nation, and they have every right to be. I would argue that every nation should be a nationalist nation, specifically a Christian nationalist nation. An American, by definition, is a white country. The founding fathers were white. Everything was white up until about 65, until we had, the Immigration Act of 65 was a hard seller. And then there was a rise in immigration from all across the world. And so that's the case that me and Josh are making is if we are to have immigration, my voice just cracked because I'm halfway sick. Rodney's real close to me. If we are to have immigration, it must be from a country that shares a common heritage with us. Does that make sense too?
Sure.
And I don't even really want the South Africans here because there is going to be cultural differences that,
yes.
I mean, if we have
I was making an exception for the case being made right now.
If we have to pick, then absolutely. But I mean, and this is the kind of, Trump basically said, hey, South Africans, you can come here on a refugee status to flee. Like they're persecuting them for being white, and they don't want to. What they want is the U.S. to use its leverage so that they can have sovereignty in the nation, which is exactly what we want. we don't want to be destroyed in our own nation, whether that's through violence or outbreeding or whatever.
Very good, gentlemen.
Does that answer the immigration question?
I think it did.
I think we were going to touch on one more thing. Term limits. You want to touch on term limits, or we want to save it for next week?
Well, we can just briefly maybe touch on it. I think how long we've been on?
It says 42 minutes. We had the little slip up earlier. I hit the button and kind of ended everything. So we're kind of running on fumes right now. But maybe, when we had that term limits discussion the other day, I'm not for term limits, but I'm not against term limits. I just don't think they do anything.
You don't know.
They may do something, but the problems that come from it are going to be just as bad as the problems that we have without them, if that makes sense. But you said term limits is
0 cents.
Maybe I could be wrong. Imagine that. I could be wrong.
Yeah, I certainly take the stance.
It'd be a first though.
Yeah, that it breeds bad things. Right, what we're seeing now, all this wasteful spending, I think is part of what term limits would get rid of. What I told you last time. By the way, February 27th, that's next week. Yeah. Is National Term Limit Day. I sent you guys a video. Check that out sometime. But there was another way, an alternative way that term limits can be realized other than going through the federal Congress. And that's if it's introduced in the state, passed in the state, and if I think it's 34 states out of our nation. If it's passed in 34 states, then I think it's implemented nationally. But when you guys get a chance, I listened to that video very briefly, but that's what I got from it. But check it out, and maybe we'll be better.
And 34 states would be 2/3.
Yeah,
that's why it passed.
2/3, right? Yeah,
and that's the states enforcing term limits on their Congress and Senate.
Yeah, federally, yeah. But
what are the chances of that? Is that higher than being passed in Congress by itself?
So yeah, because I think there's 13 states that has passed it. Yeah.
South Carolina one of them?
No, South Carolina's not one. But
our neighbors, we need to get Lindsey Graham out of here. Yeah. I know he's your friend, but he's got to go.
Our neighbors, one of our neighbors, either North Carolina or Georgia, has passed it. But yeah, they could get some real momentum there.
Josh, you changed your mind on the term limits since last time we talked? I know you were kind of on the fence there.
Well, basically what I said last week, and I think we talked about it a little bit after the show, was I just don't see it as, with all the stuff that we're faced with all the stuff we need to accomplish, that's not high on the priority list. But with what you just mentioned, I think, let's get whatever we can get done, and I think, kind of using what you just said to circumvent Congress, I'd be down with that.
Yeah,
I mean,
me too.
Again, the principle we were talking about, because we're basically okay with an aristocracy almost, that. So term limits for Mitch McConnell, I don't want a term limit for Donald Trump.
Yeah. Pelosi, all the.
Yeah.
Okay. So you want to pick and choose.
Lindsey Graham. Get him out of here.
You want to pick and choose who you can put term limits on.
That's exactly right. Doesn't everybody?
Keep your people
Isn't that what they want to do?
We got to commit to something. Either we get a king or we get civil servants. And we say we have civil servants, but they've been in power for their entire lives. They make millions of dollars, and we don't see anything for it. And it's just excuses for why we don't get what we want.
Yeah, all you've seen is rock stars created. They're more famous now than your movie stars and musicians. It's quite sickening to me.
Yeah. Well, boys, I think we had a couple hiccups today.
You mean?
I mean, we went dark.
Literal hiccups.
We ended the stream because old Turbo Jones asked a question that we didn't like, apparently. But,
sorry, Turbo Jones.
But I want to thank everybody for joining us, whoever is out there. We will be live with Rodney next Friday also. But me and Josh go live pretty regularly about 2:00.
Yeah,
so if y'all want to join us
I've been watching it.
2:00. Come on. Yeah. Rodney every Friday.
Yeah, I'll be here.
I'll be A game next Friday, so we won't have too many hiccups.
I want you guys to name this movement. You guys need to be the founder of this movement. Y'all need to name it. And
we'll have to write a book. Isn't that how it works? Everybody writes a book.
It'd be Rodney and the Blueberries.
But yeah, I want to thank everybody for coming in, and we'll see y'all Tuesday.
Yep,
maybe Monday.
Happy Valentine's Day.
Where's my outro? Come on.
Right when we need.